A quick thank you to the T5 peeps, Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Cat Crab Lobster, Dark Machine, Astraya the Dreamer, Mezec, Feudic Jarl, and Casper Arnholtz. Thank you very much. She did what? Written by Kitousha. She did what? Captain Pye blurted out, gripping the collar of his newly acquired chief of security, a Valden by the name of Absirus Kess, shaking her to emphasize the seriousness of his inquiry. COS Kess simply let the captain shake her around a bit, as this had come to be a customary thing whenever she and her mate, or girlfriend as the human kept calling her, got hired with a fresh new crew of explorers who had signed up for fat paychecks that came with discovering and lodging new habitable planets along the outer rim of the galaxy. She brought aboard 2 adult Fexes and 3 of their cubs, she repeated, all of which are now secure in the lower hold, with proper bedding and nutritional facilities provided, prepaid by the xenobiologist's subvention. She droned, having had this discussion with multiple captains on multiple ships. Seriously, how had they not been blacklisted from the Gullnet recruitment list yet? Captain Fly was unsure how to proceed. What was the lackadaisical attitude to what was clearly a critical situation? They had not only 2 adult specimens of apex predators aboard their ship, but the 3 young ones as well. Did the COS not know that nothing makes an animal more dangerous than having their spawn nearby? I have to ask, is this a simian thing? The captain carefully asked, releasing Absirus and slumping down. Absirus sighed and shrugged, a trait that apparently translated to all life forms with shoulders. Strange. To be fair, I wish it was. I wouldn't have the nerve to go near half the things unless Professor Svensson was around. At least until they acclimate to me by association, she lied, swishing her long tail back and forth in a nervous manner. Captain Fly threw his upper set of arms up into the air, like he had seen Professor Svensson do before, a sign of frustrated resignation. Fine, but I don't want to hear about a single one of them leaving the lower deck. Is that clear? He narrowed his eyes. How did he do that? The tiny eyes were already horizontal slits. How did he make them even narrower? Whatever. Look, if it makes you and the crew feel safer, I'll go down and personally see to it that she knows, and I'll even rig the lower checkpoint gate to recognize their DNA signatures should they pass through the phase field. I'm sure Professor Svensson has already logged them by now. Easy peasy, she smirked. The captain blinked. Easy what? Nothing, Terran colloquialism. Consider it done, she shouted, already leaving. After a minute or so, she had made it down into the lower deck's security portal. Being able to use both her hands and feet to climb along the sealing grates allowed her to just bypass any crew with ease, seeing as most of them stayed grounded even in this level of simulated gravity. Originating from a higher gravity planet had a lot of advantages, as long as she used gravity manipulation function of her and Jonah's shared room to work out to retain muscle mass. She had even gained a few extra pounds of muscle since Jonah's home world had a slightly more dense gravity than hers. She was getting jacked from just doing the basic workout. She flipped down onto the floor and passed through the standard phase field. It didn't really stop anything from passing, but it would set off alarms and initiate a lockdown if anything not registered to or excluded from its DNA signature tried to pass through. After making 2 turns around the narrow corridor's sharp bends, she entered the lower cargo hold and immediately had to stop herself from uttering "Aww" as she saw the scene before her. Jonna was sitting cross-legged on the floor inside a quickly built enclosure at the far end of the hold. One of the Fexus adults, presumably the male as it was slightly smaller than the others, sat next to and cautiously watched the human who was cooing softly while giving the cub a gentle scritches on its belly as it had decided to nestle into her lap. 3-pronged tongue lolling out the side of its maw, kicking its left hind leg over so often. Who's the cutest little murder fluff? You are, she giggled, before hearing the female, who was curled up around her and the other 2 younglings' soft nest of blankets and pillows, let loose a warning hiss towards Absirus, who stopped her approach. The male slowly stood up and prowled around Jonna, standing between the newcomer and its cub, seemingly not worried about the other creature behind it, currently grooming the young one. A soft half-whisper from Jonna. Don't worry, Abby. Just remember what I showed you. Abby rolled her eyes and relaxed her posture. She knew full well that the Fexes, even the larger female, didn't pose a real threat to either her or Jonna. They were not even close to as dangerous as house cats, even though the male came up to her waist and the female her chest. The benefits of being from a planet with almost 4 times the gravity of these grumpy cat-fox things. But she didn't do this because they were a threat, but to make them less likely to hurt themselves or another crew member in panic. Nobody but the captain and chief medic knew about Abby and Jonna was the class 10 and 12 respectively on the SSI, Species Survival Index, also known as Death Wielders. Stupid name. They should reclassify everyone as class 6 and lower as Nerd Wielders. She slowly lowered herself to eye level of the Fexes, sitting down with her legs to one side, holding herself up with one arm and resting the other on her hip. Avoiding direct eye contact for now, she adopted a relaxed and disinterested body language, looking around and acting like she didn't care that the male was slowly approaching her. She waited until it came close enough, then let out a snort, causing the male to hesitate and stop. Then, slowly, very slowly, raised her hand between them and tilted her head back a bit, exposing her neck. This gave the Fexes pause, confused as to why this creature was showing such a mix of familiarity, trust, and non-aggression. Like a pack member would, it sniffed Abby's hand curiously, not recognizing the scent as the prey it knew, but instead it recognized a hint of the other creature's scent on it, the one who was not a threat to its young. Finally, Abby's eyes finally met the beast's, and she blinked very slowly, directly at it before returning to looking elsewhere, confident and calm. The Fexes began to relax its muscles, and after a few minutes it took a careful step forward and touched its nose to Abby's hand, to which it felt the same response as it had with the other creature, a gentle brush along its muzzle, the feeling of being groomed and nuzzled by a pack member, family. Abby could see Jonna's smile growing wider as she returned it, carefully, not to grin since baring teeth would probably ruin everything right now. After a bit, the male was fully on nuzzling her, burying its snout into a warm, fuzzy neck and snorting happily, with careful and relaxed movements. She got up and moved over, careful to notice the Fex's body language. Luckily, it didn't show any apprehension, and soon she had sat herself next to Jonna and leaned against her shoulder, looking down a little bundle of fuzzy death in her partner's lap, sleeping soundly. The Fex's male now lay with its head in Abby's lap, enjoying a gentle caress of her fingers between its long ears. A pair of lips touched her forehead. Sneaky human. She was now 2 surprise smooches behind. See, you're a natural, sweetie. Jonna hummed and leaned her head against Abby's. I learned from the best, she replied and sighed. She looked over at the female who was currently cleaning her cubs and occasionally throwing careful glances their way. Her body language still indicated that she was wary of them, but did not feel threatened. It would take a significantly longer time to make her begin to truly bonding with them, but mothers were often much more careful and slow to trust when it came to her young. It was just natural, she could emphasize. Love, she whispered, you think we're gonna upstage Lee this time? She smirked, but Jonna deadpanned. I wouldn't bet on it. Knowing that guy, he's probably gonna show up with a dragon or something. He's too much, she muttered, then went back to nuzzling her little love monkey, as she liked to call Abby. Later, Captain Blythe, now joined by Chief Medical Officer Kish, watched the 2 simians currently napping in a pile of Class 7 apex predators and its young in the ramshackle enclosure downstairs via a camera feed. You know, he said, glancing over at the old VulDwiin, for being some of the deadliest predators on this side of the galaxy, they're surprisingly cute when they sleep. The old doctor glanced back. Which ones? It asked. The captain decided against answering that. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.